When you heard Maduro had been captured by the U.S. From Venezuela, let me know in the comments what your first thought was. I guess I don't know exactly what my first thought was, but it was close to like, you break it, you own it. So we broke it. What do we own? I guess that's sort of what I'm going to be talking about today. And this workbook, not spreadsheet, PowerPoint, you can find the link to it in the description. So I'm going to ask a question. Why was it so easy for the U.S. to kidnap Maduro? Why couldn't the U.S. kidnap Putin or Khomeini, for example? And I say the answer is because Venezuela doesn't have anything valuable enough to pay for the protection he needed. Now, again, I just sort of want to put that in the context that in general, I feel like, yeah, oil is, you get the protection of your oil business. Like Putin has, the military might that his oil buys. The U.S. has it that, that's commensurate with what we extract. Same thing for Iran. So anyway, just let me know if you disagree with that. But I believe that, and because of that, right, I think that the U.S. should be, or everybody should be like, well, wait, if he's that easy to abduct, like, do we really want what he's got? So anyway, I'm just putting that out there to get everybody going in this thing. So I just want like one of my things, and again, let me know in the comments if you think I'm correct. Is that I think it's like a sort of antiquated. It's not true anymore that the U.S. had all the technology that you would need to mine oil and gas. I believe China has it now too. So here's a facility made in China that was just brought online recently, I think in the past half year in Venezuela. There's a picture of it. There's another picture I wanted to do of the big oil and gas rig they built for Ramco, I believe. It's like massive. Anyway, I couldn't find it, but pretty sure you guys know what I'm talking about. So anyway, like, China's obviously very is already in this business. So again, because I'm not an expert in the oil and gas business, I've never been on an oil field or anything. I still just look. I think you can still learn a lot just like looking at it, like just asking basic questions. Like, if China has all this technology, these capabilities now, and they're not getting a ton of oil on Venezuela, it says something, right? I mean, you can argue about what it says, but you can definitely clearly say, well, the oil isn't that profitable or that easy, or they would have taken it, right? So that tells me there are a lot of problems there, right? Now you could say, oh, it's political, and Maduro doesn't want to do this or do that. I don't know. I don't really buy that. I think if it's valuable enough, it will find its way to the market. So when things are difficult to make or mine or whatever, yeah, this is usually a good reason for that. So I sort of want to say, like, the inflation that we saw in 2021 to 2023 and today, it partly represents deferred oil gas price discovery. And I've felt this for a long time. I'll be curious if any of you agree in the comments. So during the fracking, I always felt like, well, oil needs to be more money for this. Otherwise, we're just printing money and we're pushing the can down the road. And so that's what I feel is going on here, is that somebody believes like, oh, well, we can just go in and get this Venezuela oil. We can pump a bunch of free money into the market. And even if these companies go bankrupt, we'll get the oil. It'll all be good. I just don't believe that the evidence so far says that's going to be correct, because capital markets lost $300 billion on U.S. fracking, essentially. Foreign buyers are now purchasing less U.S. debt. It's 30% today versus 50% today, and it continues to decline. Heavy crude economics are worse than shale. I mean, or just as bad. And so if they're just as bad, right, then we're looking at a loss at the current rates of oil, valuation. And then the operational instability, right? I mean, if we're going to look at Libya, which we'll do later. So I'd say that the political economy insight here is that anybody advocating to access Venezuelan oil, whoever the powers behind the Trump administration that got this to happen, they're probably ignorant of oil extraction economics, right? Which other energy YouTubers have gone on about correctly, right? They're dishonest about cost and timeline, and then they're motivated. So they must be motivated by something other than oil. Again, it just doesn't really, on an economic sense, there's just so many red flags here. Anyway, so I just want to go over, just for you in the comments, like my perception of the oil business. And you let me know if any of these things are wrong, because I think these are truths that most Americans don't know or don't want to know. And because they don't understand it, they don't understand the kind of risks that we're taking here, like the, just how risky this is in human life, etc. So number one, it's dangerous work, will always be dangerous work, and anyone who does it faces real risk of getting injured or killed. The work is often in the middle of nowhere. People go to work a field for money and for no other reason. Outside the U.S. and Europe, everything is self-policed, so rules will be broken if there are financial incentives, and workers will be dealt with in an extrajudicial manner. I guess another way of saying this, that is like, it's lawless out there. It's not lawless, I mean, in the way, yes, I mean, it's lawless. It's not like a structure to deal with your complaints or your gripes or whatever, right? Everybody's out there trying to get this stuff. If you work with somebody that could get you hurt or killed, you're not going to have a court case like like they have a right to their job or whatever, right? I mean, it's not. A lot of it happens just in power dynamics within these social groups of these miners, and so you can't really look at it from our lens of, oh well, this is the law, this is the right. It operates on a different sort of set of rules, which are not necessarily bad or good, but just are necessary for the type of work that they do. So anyway, so outside, so I said number three, that the oil is valuable, and once it starts flowing, it can hurt the well to stop it. So time is money, right? Making the site vulnerable to theft, sabotage, or insurgency, which means that everyone who lives near the operation knows that they will be left with pollution and chump change, so to speak. So I'm just saying, something very basic that is true of all oil wells everywhere, that if you can't mine the oil and sell it, the next best thing is to offer protection to those who are. And this is everywhere. So wherever the oil goes to, if you can interrupt any part of that chain, then if it's easier to pay you off than to not, then they'll pay you off. But now that means like, okay, the pipeline, whatever, is going through my little land, and I'm getting bribed from whatever, from this. I'm not being bribed. I'm getting a payoff by the oil company interest to protect this part of the pipeline. Well, what about the village next to me? The village next to me is like, well, I want that deal. So it's not even up to the oil companies or national interests to who's going to fight. Like, the U.S. can go in there and say, okay, this oil pipeline is ours, right? Or this rig or this place or whatever. They can say, okay, and they can put a perimeter. They can put U.S. Marines around the perimeter or whatever. And then what are the Marines going to do? They're going to make deals with the local, warlords or whatever, right? To like, okay, you keep this safe. But you can't stop them from fighting with other people. That's why it's very difficult. It's not like a simple matter to do this. So going in and getting Maduro, like, I mean, that's easy. That's not the problem. Not that the problem of the guy at the top is not the problem. It's all the others. It'd be the same thing with Putin. Like, well, yeah, we can go get Putin. That doesn't mean Russia's going to collapse. That doesn't mean all the people who have their interests in or have control over these various oil and gas assets, that they're going away anywhere, that anybody's going to take their guns away or anything. So anyway, I don't want to belabor this too much. And then, so yeah, this is, I guess, part of it. Every oil and gas mine must be protected with lethal force, to count to number three. In most places outside the U.S., it is shoot to kill for anyone who tries to approach without permission. This armed isolation also enables operators to wage undocumented mini-wars with local warlords, to cut corners on safety and labor practices with minimal outside scrutiny. And I don't remember the date. I mean, I should have looked it up before I did the video. But in Syria, remember, these Russians tried to basically overrun this oil field, as far as I know. And it was the only reason it was in the news is because they didn't know that there was a large presence of U.S. forces there. So as they went to attack, the U.S. forces called in, Bomber Command, and basically killed 300 of these Russians and mercenaries working with the Russians. And so what that episode told me is this happens all the time. The only reason we know about that mini war was because the attackers just didn't understand who they were attacking. If they'd known, they wouldn't have attacked. Right? Would you attack anybody if you know that person in the desert is going to call some F-16s and drop some bombs on your head? No, I don't think so. I mean, nobody's stupid. So that tells me, I mean, that's the reality of oil and gas, again, that we don't want to look at. But anyway, you let me know if you think I'm wrong in seeing the world in that way. And then number 5, the lethal force is commensurate with the value of oil. So some operations are so valuable, they need state-sponsored militaries to guard. So Saudi Arabia is a prime example. But so if all these 5 things are correct, then we have to ask the question, okay, is the Venezuelan oil worth all that? Because in short, one way or another, oil gas mining is lonely and dangerous work performed mostly outside society's laws, only if the money is good enough. So everyone who worked in that Syrian oil field or whatever, they understood the Russians would take it over if they could, right? So, and they understood, for all they know, all they expected, the U.S. could have just abandoned. Again, actually, the U.S. tried to get the troops out and it couldn't. If it got the troops out, it probably wouldn't have abandoned, and who knows what would happen. So whatever. Anyway, so the whole oil and gas mining business gets a lot of people killed for the luxury of others who psychologically will do whatever it takes to ignore that simple fact. All right. So the interesting thing to me about this whole subject is it isn't like much of this stuff is hidden. So I asked, Claude AI about some of this stuff, and it just gave me page after page of these things that are obviously well known. This isn't stuff that's hidden, right? So the media just makes up a story. I mean, the media, anybody writing for the New York Times can, do what I just did. Say, hey, Claude, ChatGPT, whatever, like, what are the issues involved here? And it would tell them, but it's not going to put them in. It'll only put certain little things in the story because it wants to keep the story aligned with the politics or the public relations of the government giving them access to information, right? So anyway, so skilled workers, it goes through the skilled workers problems. It goes through the cost analysis. Again, this PowerPoint is in a link, and if you want to go read through this. In the description, the oil recovery reality, the U.S. military casualties. And so, the brutal math, right, the final thing is that the U.S. will have to spend $100 billion or more, except hundreds or thousands of casualties. It's going to take 5 to 10 years, which we might get 1 to 2 million barrels per day of heavy crude. In an environment requiring permanent armed occupation, while dealing with constant international criticism, right? So, versus just buying the oil in the global markets, developing other sources or having other alternatives. So I'm sorry, I'm not on the slide. But again, China's been doing this. So it's not as if Venezuela hasn't been pumping oil and they're just like hoarding it, not doing anything with it out of spite. China has been working with them to get this oil. So the whole idea that the U.S. is going to go in there, like we're going to go in there and all of a sudden make these oil wells that haven't been properly mined, the equipment is all rotting or rusting or whatever. They're going to take this rusted equipment and put in new equipment and get some oil is counterfactual. That's not true. I mean, Venezuela is trying to mine the oil. So there are a lot of factors here, but there's nothing in the the basic news about it. So yeah, so that's the that was the end of that thing. So where am I in minutes? Oh, 15 minutes. So yeah, I mean, look forward to your comments. Yeah, that's my take. It's I could just say all the things I want to say that many people want to say about the intelligence of this operation, but I'm not going to say that because I just have to resist myself because it doesn't help any of us to just fall to say what everybody to get all ranty and whatever. It's we all know what's going on. We all know from Libya, right? So Libya, I think, was 2011, right? Gaddafi was deposed, and production is still 30% less than what it was then, right? So we know from that complexity that we'll be lucky now if Venezuela can keep its current production going, let alone increase it. That's the historical evidence we have so far. Well, thanks for watching.